The night he tore the house apart, I agreed to watch my childhood friend S place for 2 weeks while she was on a business trip. She had a couple of geckos, a small freshwater tank, and a jungle of houseplants that required more attention than I expected, but I was happy to do. The house was way nicer than my apartment, and it felt a little like being on a free vacation. The first week was peaceful. I watered orchids, fed the fish, and slept in a bed that didn't squeak every time I turned over. It really did feel like crashing in an upscale rental. One evening in the second week, I was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through my phone when I heard a cough right outside the sliding glass door. It was shockingly close, the sort of sound that makes you realize somebody is standing only a few feet away. I jumped up and flipped the porch light on, heart thudding, hoping the brightness would scare off whoever was out there. For a long, slow minute there was nothing, no shadow under the door, no flashlight beam. Whoever had coughed had vanished. I told myself to relax, but the feeling stuck to me like a film. I left the door locked and drove out for takeout because it was already late and I didn't want to mess with the kitchen. As I passed back along the side yard to the car, I noticed flattened paths in the grass, neat, intentional tracks from the sidewalk to the back of the house and back again. The blades were pressed so cleanly you could see the exact turns. It didn't look like someone had stumbled around. It looked like someone had walked the same line twice on purpose. When I returned from food, I checked the yard again and found nothing new. I shrugged it off, ate on the couch, and watched a stupid comedy until my eyes grew heavy. I turned out the lights and scrolled a little more in bed, the house quiet except for the soft hum of the tank filter. That's when I heard someone moving across the front lawn, deliberate steps, the crunch of gravel, then a slow walk around to the back. My stomach tightened when I realized they were testing doors, listening for movement. I crept up to the top of the stairs and killed the hall light. I leaned over the railing and watched the back entry. The dark was absolute. The only thing I could see was the faint outline of the glass door. The sound of someone fiddling with the handle stopped as soon as I hit the switch. For an instant I felt relieved, then a single, insane thought popped into my head. What if they weren't trying to get in? What if they were pacing, rehearsing something? Seconds later, a window on the ground floor shattered with a sound like the world breaking. Glass exploded into the living room, glittering in a path toward my feet. The animal instinct to run did not work. I bolted into my friend's bedroom, slammed the door, and called 911 with my voice small and frantic. Through the chaos outside, the crash, heavy footsteps, and the metal clatter of something being swung, I heard the slow, controlled smashing of furniture. The noise downstairs was deliberate and terrifying. It wasn't someone ripping drawers to steal things. It was someone destroying an order as if they wanted to unmake the space. In a frenzy of panic and adrenaline, I heard the intruder move through the first floor, flipping art frames, toppling houseplants, kicking over shelves. It felt like an assault on memory, not a theft. I screamed the address into the phone between the sounds, and the dispatcher's voice told me they were sending units immediately. I could hear police sirens in the distance, but in the moment those sirens still felt like a lifetime away. Then the steps came up the stairs, heavy, purposeful. They reached the hallway outside my door and started pounding on it, hard enough to make the frame shudder. I had latched the knob before hiding, but that sound of wood cracking under force made the room vibrate with fear. I clutched the blanket to my chest and squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the next blow. A panel came loose with a splintering crack, and the intruder shoved a hand through the gap. I backed into the corner and pressed my knees to my chest. When the door finally burst open, he stepped in like he was impatient, not triumphant. He wore a hood and a surgical mask and carried a battered metal baseball bat. He looked at me for a heartbeat, a look full of raw anger and something hollow beneath. But then he turned away and kept wrecking the room without ever touching me. He swung the bat through a bookshelf as if he were trying to tear the house down piece by piece. It was like watching someone work through a checklist of destruction. He hit shelves, lampstands, dressers, ripping open whatever hid inside. What made the whole thing surreal was how he treated me, utterly invisible. He never sought me out. He rushed past me into the adjoining room, hacking and smashing like he was hungry for the sound and the ruin itself. He ignored every personal item he walked by, leaving wallets, phones, and jewelry untouched. He left my face in the pile of splinters while he ruined the things that gave the house its life. Then, just as suddenly as he had started, he bolted and was gone into the night. The police arrived minutes later, which felt like an oxymoron. Minutes in that heartbeat felt like forever. They tore through the house and took statements, their boots crunching on glass and pottery. I sat on the stairs wrapped in a blanket and watched them catalog pieces of our life now scattered on the floor. Nothing was missing. The detective asked the same set of exhausted questions. Who would want to do this? Did the homeowner have enemies? Had anyone threatened her lately? My friend got the call the next morning. She cut her trip short and came home to the ruin. Days later, we walked the house together and could find no explanation. No career-client disputes, no angry exes, nothing that fit the kind of targeted malice we'd felt. The camera on the neighbor's porch caught the shape of someone moving like a shadow between trees, but the hood and mask hid everything useful. For weeks, we replayed the footage, looked for license plates, asked people around the block, and still came up with nothing. The police said it was likely someone who knew the house or who at least had planned the route, someone who wanted to search the place for an unknown object or to send a message by tearing it apart. That made my skin crawl more than any other explanation. The worst part for me was that I never felt personally threatened in the way I expected to. He had been inches from my face and didn't reach for me. He watched me and then acted as though he hadn't even noticed I existed. Whether that was mercy or pure disinterest, it left me hollow in a way I didn't anticipate. I kept waiting for the moment where it would become clear why he'd come, what he'd been searching for, but the only conclusion we could draw was that some people are willing to break things for reasons you'll never know. My friend replaced what she could, moved some of the more sentimental things out, and eventually sold the house. The memory of the bat swinging through her living room sticks with me. The way it sounded like an animal in a cage and the way it left the house louder and emptier than before. To this day I check locks twice, keep a light on at night when I'm in someone else's home, and I never, ever ignore the small noises at the window. I worked the late shift at a corner gas station last spring, that slow, almost empty stretch where the night creeps by in half-hour blocks and the only bright thing is the neon pump signs. It was raining the entire shift, not a downpour but steady, the kind that makes the parking lot smell like wet asphalt and turns the fluorescent lights into halos on the puddles. On nights like that, people come in for quick things, coffee, cigarettes, a pack of gum. Most don't linger. I spent my hours restocking shelves, surfing my phone, and watching the little screen where the pumps blinked like constellations. About an hour before I was supposed to clock out, I heard a soft tapping on the front glass. I looked up, a tall figure in a dark hood, shoulders hunched against the rain, just standing there, tapping rhythmically with 2 fingers. He looked like he was waiting for someone to open the door for him. I unlocked it, stepped out to gesture that the door was open, and he walked past me without meeting my eyes, straight to the counter. That kind of obliviousness was almost comical until he asked for a pack of the cheapest cigarettes, paid in cash, and walked back out into the rain, disappearing along the shoulder like he'd always been part of the weather. I shrugged it off and went back to stocking energy drinks. A short time later, the same tapping at the door, same slow rhythm. He stood there again, and this time when I asked if he was okay, he mumbled something that didn't make sense. I offered to call someone to let him use the payphone by the pumps, and he kept pointing down the road while saying help in clipped words and broken phrases. He handed me a crumpled card and the word container popped into my head only because I'd seen guys do that before, use the cheap plastic jerrycan to carry gas for a broken down engine. We walked outside together. The pump hissed as I filled the container. He hovered slightly behind me, pressed to the shadow of the building like he didn't want to be fully seen. That itch in my gut came back. Why the furtiveness? I finished, handed the container back, and started to move away when he grabbed my arm. He started talking fast, words spilling out in a mix I couldn't follow, eyes darting. I tried to pull free, politely, and that's when something in the corner of the store moved wrong. A man I hadn't noticed was inside, near the snacks, stuffing handfuls of items into a backpack. He was quick and methodical, the kind of person who practices his motion. He looked up at me for a second as if checking my reaction, and then he vaulted the counter in one fluid motion. The world narrowed to a single white-hot sting as someone's fist or object came down and everything went black. When I came to on the floor, my head felt like it had been wrapped in cotton and someone was pounding on it from the inside. I crawled to my knees and my hands found the countertop edge. Papers and a knocked-over display littered the tiles. The other man was gone. My jacket was torn where he grabbed me. I could hear sirens in the distance, faint, like they belonged to someone else's life, and then the CCTV monitor cycling back through footage that I watched with a dull, sick clarity. The video made my stomach drop. The man who'd been stuffing the backpack had a glint of metal in his hand, a gun, and he didn't hesitate to shove it into his bag. The second guy, the one who'd pretended to need help, had been watching my every move while his partner cleared shelves. When the guy behind the counter looked up, the one inside jumped over, hit me, and they were out the back door in 30 seconds, into the rain and away. The police came, questions and flashlights and the smell of antiseptic wipes. I got stitched up, they swabbed the back room for prints, and the officers took my statement while I tried to describe things ID only half registered, the hood's particular curve. The way one man tilted his head when he tapped the glass, the limp of the other's jacket as he moved. The hospital visit left me with a concussion and an ache that lingered for days, but I walked out with the worst part lodged somewhere under my ribs, the embarrassment of being played. That's what I feel most, that I was easy for them to use. They'd trained their eyes on the store the whole week, learned the hum of the cash register, waited until the rain thinned the lot and the lights blurred. They rehearsed a scene where one man's helplessness was bait and the other's speed was the blade. Maybe I interrupted a plan that would have been worse if I'd tried to be a hero. Maybe the blacking out saved me from witnessing something worse. The cops said I'd done the right thing calling for help, but the footage showed a quiet, ruthless efficiency that made their escape almost poetic in the most awful way. I kept thinking about how small details decide whether something goes wrong. The way I opened the door for a drenched stranger without checking his eyes. The split-second decision to step out and help. The simple kindness that got twisted into a distraction. They didn't need to force themselves into the store. They just needed me to look away at exactly the right second. It's a small thing in the bright aftermath of stitches and police reports, but it changed me. I lock the door before I go outside now. I ask for ID. I don't let strangers stand too close when the weather makes us all vulnerable. A month later, the station called to say they found the car on a highway dash cam, a dark sedan with plates that didn't match the owner on file. They traced it to a rental agency, then hit a dead end. The men were ghosts in municipal records, and my description didn't turn into names. The footage was shared between stations, and, as far as I know, it helped in at least one other case where a clerk recognized the jacket. That's the best part. Maybe the footage kept someone else safe. What I keep is the memory of the rain and the quiet tapping, and the way two men used it to become a story I'll tell for years to come. I tell it now, not because I want sympathy, but because the details matter. When people ask me what I do differently, I tell them to trust the small alarms. If someone taps the glass in the rain, take a breath before you open the door. If a stranger wants help, offer it in view of cameras or other people. Kindness isn't wrong, naivety can be costly. I still go to work, the pumps still click. The rain still comes, but every late shift now comes with an edge. I check the mirrors more often. I keep a flashlight within arm's reach. And when a stranger asks for something odd, I listen closely for the shape of the answer, because sometimes the most harmless thing in the world is the distraction someone else needs to get away.